Hello, I'm Paul Kagabine with the Garland County Library, and I'm here with Mary Zunick, who wears many hats because we've hosted her for a couple events already this year, and her role is the Hot Springs Sister City Program Director. But this evening, she's here as the Hot Springs Cultural Affairs Manager, specifically to talk about Gallery Walk, which is, of course, a long running tradition here in Hot Springs that I'm going to leave Mary to give a proper introduction on here in a bit. But we plan for this to be the first installment of a monthly series on the first Wednesday of every month. And I believe Miss Zunick is going to try and have a special guest, specifically a local artist each month to go along with this. And tonight's special guest is going to be Jim Larkin of Fox Pass Pottery. And I'll do the same thing there and leave a more thorough introduction to Mary. So as always, I'll be monitoring the program and I'll be able to hop in and read off any comments or questions that you in the audience have for them. And I'm going to stop stalling and let you take over, Mary.
Thank you so much, Paul. And thanks to the Garland County Library. I mean, what a fantastic staff, and we're just so fortunate in Garland County Library to have Paul and all of the other staff that in spite of COVID and restrictions where we can't all gather at the library, that they found ways to still reach out to the public and actually even expand the outreach through programs like this. I was looking back, one of the Sister City programs that we did had over 900 views. And I think the capacity at the meeting room at the library is about 125 or so. So we've really been able to expand the outreach thanks to Paul and the other staff's creativity. So thank you very much for allowing me to come on this evening and talk about the Hot Springs arts community. I'm the Cultural Affairs Manager for Visit Hot Springs, and as he mentioned, I work with the Sister City program and stay very busy with that part of the year. But then I'm also very fortunate to work with the members of the Hot Springs arts community. And one of the most sacred traditions in Hot Springs and with the Hot Springs arts community is Gallery Walk. The first Friday night of every single month since 1989, people have flooded to downtown Hot Springs and the surrounding area to visit the galleries. That's the night that the galleries stay open late. They premiere new exhibits. The artists are there in many cases. There's pop-up galleries, which are spaces that aren't normally galleries, but for that one night every month, they turn into a gallery. So, and as you can imagine, COVID has caused some galleries to not quite be open yet. Certainly all of them want you to wear masks and social distance. Some aren't quite serving refreshments yet, but still Gallery Walk continues. And so I'll be talking a little bit later on this evening about what specifically is happening during Gallery Walk, everything from the opening of a national art exhibit at the Convention Center to what's happening at Justice Gallery and Art Originally and Whittington Gallery, American Art Gallery, all of our downtown art galleries that are participating in Gallery Walk. I'll be giving you a little hint as to what you can expect Friday evening when you come out. So we're anxious to have everybody back open, and I know I am, and sure all of you are as well, that we can all go out and see our art friends and support our art galleries downtown and support our downtown merchants. I know it's easy to jump online, but I just want to encourage all of you to go to Gallery Walk. But the rest of the month, when it's time to look for a gift, please think of our local artists and art galleries. And but before we talk about Gallery Walk, as Paul mentioned, each month I'm going to visit with at least one of our local artists. And so the very first person that is going to be our guest on this program this evening is Jim Larkin, Jim and Barbara Larkin, owners of Fox Pass Pottery. Now, during Arts in the Park last year, the Hot Springs Area Cultural Alliance did a special virtual studio tour. And one of those studio tours was out at Fox Pass Pottery. So before we meet Jim, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek at Fox Pass Pottery by sharing the virtual studio tour. Now, you can see Fox Pass studio tours at hotspringsarts.org website. You just click on the studio tours tab and it will take you to a whole array of different studios. So the first one though, I'm going to share my screen here and pull up, there we are, Fox Pass Pottery. This is what the screen looks like. You can see Whittington Gallery, Allison Parsons Studio, but I'm going to select Fox Pass Pottery and hit play.
Hi, I'm Jim Larkin, and I'm here at Fox Pass Pottery.
I do hand building, and mainly I do slab cloth. I roll out slabs of clay and then form them to make vases, wall hangings, all sorts of things.
4 different clays and 4 different minerals together to make our clay body. Here's some red clay that we color it with, some talc to help flux it, all these different materials we do. We just buy them in ton quantities of one of the key ingredients is this fire clay out of Missouri. It's a real tough brick clay for high fire brick. And then some other clays. Each clay adds certain properties that I couldn't get from a single clay. I do mainly wheel work. I could draw with it. I could pattern. In this case, I'm just going to spread it out here on my wheel thrown pieces. She will sculpt or carve or decorate. So a lot of times we work together on pieces, or I will throw components for some of her hand-built pieces. I also make our glazes. This is an extremely runny glaze I made from wood ashes from our wood stove, a little red clay, and a little lime, an ancient glaze. And it runs, the old timers call it tobacco spit glaze because it looks like tobacco spit running down that spit. It doesn't sound very attractive. When it's all done, this is in the bowl, but it's the same, it'll have the same glaze on it. And you can see some of the dots, these blue dots here will become these black ones, and those combing marks become more subtle. Some of the shatter marks that I made right in there, and the same thing on that bowl. So I make this bowl quite often. Never the two come out the same, but we share different responsibilities in the shop, but then they dovetail together enough that we've been in the same little workshop room for 47 years, so I guess we'll stick it out with our shared duties. Well, we walk out the kitchen door and we're at work, which is good news, bad news. It's so convenient, and I wouldn't want to change it. And a lot of times at 10:30, I can go out and cover something or uncover something right at bedtime and save myself a lot of time the next day. But also, it's hard to know when to quit work because you're right there.
I hope they enjoy the ambiance we tried to create in the shop and the studio. Thanks for joining us today. We are Fox Pass Pottery, Jim Larkin and Barbara Larkin. We are located on 379 Fox Pass Cutoff in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And we'd love to see you come out to the store.
We're open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 5.
Okay, now we will, okay, I need to stop sharing. Let me get my technology fixed here. So now I would like to, I feel like you've probably met Jim Larkin by the video, but I would like to introduce you to Jim Larkin of Fox Pass Pottery. Hi, Jim, and hi, Barbara. There you are, both of you in there. Hi there, so nice to see you. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
And we saw the video, but before, I'd like to just know a little bit about the two of you. What have you always been in the same location? What did you do before you were professional artists?
Well, Barbara has a cough tonight. It's not COVID related, but she has a cough, so she's not going to talk much. But yes, it really irritates her throat. She's allergy related. But anyhow, Barbara was an art major. I was a chemistry and biology major. We met in college, and she won me over to the dark side. So that was my degree, and I loved that. Barbara grew up knowing that she was an artist from an early childhood, and that was the direction she traveled in. But I grew up loving to make things. I was a maker all my life. I didn't know that you could go to college and major in making things. And I loved science. That was a love of mine. So it was a natural thing for me. But I never got away from making, and a variety of things led me to pottery. I had seen it done on a campus art show. We went to Washita, down in Arkadelphia. I was over at Henderson at an art show, and Joe Coulter, who was the pottery teacher there for many years, was very influential in my life, but didn't take classes from Joe, but he was very helpful and influential. But his students were having a show, and they were working on a wheel, and I thought, I've got to try that, and didn't have time to take a pottery course, and I don't think Washita offered one, but if they had, I couldn't have taken it. I was too busy with science. But got out of school, and Barbara was going to shows with her paintings. She was a painter, and she was doing a lot of portrait work. And when she was at shows, I would talk to the potters because I just couldn't get that image, and that I wanted to see what that felt like, and ended up just bug potters all over, and met Joe Coulter and met other potters around who were very giving and telling me what I needed to know. Books, there weren't that many books really at the time, but I was driving by what's now the Math Science School, and there was a crane taking a big exhaust fan off the roof, and they had stripped the outer core of it, and there was a shaft and propeller blades and a pulley, and I could see a potter's wheel in that. I pulled my truck over. This was in the early 70s. This was in the 60s, late 60s. And asked them what they were going to do, and they said, take it to the dump. And I said, would you put it on my truck? And they looked at me like I was insane and put it on my truck. And I took it out to a farm shop. We were living out at Brook Hill Ranch at the time, and Don had a farm shop, and he and I took that thing and built a potter's wheel out of it. And so that was my introduction really to clay. And then we met a potter who actually, Ruth Kunosh, who was very active in the art scene in the day in Hot Springs. And Harry, her husband, was a painter, and a very active painter in Hot Springs, and became known nationally, actually. But anyhow, Ruth had a potter's wheel, and she was a potter, and she was really influential in getting us started. And Barbara began to do more clay work along, just because we started getting into it. I was teaching science, teaching school at the time. But pardon?
I would say you certainly are an artist if you see an exhaust fan, if you see a potter's wheel and an exhaust fan.
As far as I know, that wheel it never did work real well, but it may still be working. I ought to look that up and see if it's still around. But that's where it started anyhow. And so we just got so serious, and we eventually thought, we just got to do this. And I'm sure our parents thought we had just totally lost our mind, but they were very kind, and obviously must have had some trust or just had given up. I don't know which, but they said very little, but, and were encouraging. But we just started off, you know.
And now, when did you open Fox Pass Pottery?
We opened the shop in 1973. Probably before we should have, but you don't, if you wait till you should, maybe you don't ever. And if I knew now what I knew then, I would have gone maybe to Japan or England and apprenticed, you know, but we didn't have children at the time. But we didn't know that was an option, you know, but it would have been I could have gone back to graduate school, but for what I wanted to do, an apprenticeship would have been a wonderful thing. We did apprentice in a sense that we just bugged potters to death and read everything. Built our first kiln. I'd never seen a gas kiln. I found a book, a Daniel Rhodes kiln book. There was a picture of one in the back, and I have building skills. I grew up in construction, so I have skills that I can do. But so we built that kiln. We fired it for 6 years. Never did fire real well, but but we learned a lot. And so I've built many kilns since then for other people and so on. But that's where I started.
And now, I know you have a background in the sciences. Now, do you still use that background, the chemistry background, in your pottery work at all?
You know, it's not necessary, but it's nice to. I enjoy glaze formulation, putting together glazes, and anybody can learn to do it if they want to. You can start at the molecular level and work up to a physical glaze, and it's very helpful to understand. But there are thousands of glazes published, and people are much freer with that information than they used to be. And there's so much online, and there are glaze calculation programs. When I started off, I was doing it with a slide rule, you know, and that's here's my slide rule right here. It's still here. I get it out and use it sometimes just so I can remember how. But now then, there are glaze calculation programs for your computer that make that very accessible. But it's certainly not necessary. But it's kind of nice. I have taught glaze chemistry workshops for potters, and you know that it's a good thing to know, but it's certainly not necessary.
Well, now that is to use the chemistry and science involved in something that's so traditional for Arkansas and for this area. And now, speaking of that, in 2012, you were named the Arkansas Living Treasure. And how were you selected for that? Can you tell us about what a living treasure is?
Well, it's almost embarrassing to talk about that, but it's a wonderful honor. I don't mean otherwise, but you're nominated. Someone nominates you, and then you go through a process of just submitting a lot of information, and the Arkansas Arts Council has a committee that goes through that. Each year they pick someone, and it's a wonderful honor to be in that category with so many people, like from Dallas Bump and Leon Nihus and Robin Horn, people in so many different fields. There's so many people who, I think there may be 14 now or 15. I'm not sure, but it's quite an honor and I appreciate that.
It's just traditional. It's traditional artwork, though, isn't it? Or
well, not necessarily, although it's based in that. But like, for example, Robin, and she works in wood. Now, her it's not a traditional functional craft.
Yeah.
But there's a knife maker from over in Nashville, a wonderful craftsman who makes wooden hand planes, just exquisite. There's a quilt maker, there's a fiddle maker, viola. There's just, oftentimes it is a traditional craft, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes, like Robin, her sculpture. But generally, it is, you're chosen I don't know of anybody who's a full-time teacher. I think that's one of the things you need to practice your craft, but you also need to share your craft, and that's part of it too. It's not necessarily the best craftspeople in the world, but it's a combination of things like doing your craft and sharing your craft with others, and I've done that through apprenticeships and so on.
Well,
so
yeah,
it's a neat thing.
Well, and it's a traditional, I mean, the from being in your shop, the vessels that you create are certainly functional, but they're also very, very beautiful as well. And I think the same with Robin Horn and some of the others, the carving and the certainly a traditional craft, but a very skilled interpretation of it as well. So, well, and I thought what we might do is I have some photos that I would like to share, and I'm going to share my screen, and we can just kind of talk through them if that's okay.
Sure.
Let me go back here to share my screen. Okay, this is what Fox Pass Pottery looks like when you take the drive north on Highway 7 from downtown Hot Springs, just a few minutes north. This is Fox Pass Pottery. I went out yesterday morning and visited with Jim and Barbara, and it's beautiful.
Mary, your screen wasn't shared.
Oh, it wasn't?
Nope.
Okay, thank you for telling me that. Okay.
There we go.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I must have hit the wrong button. There, is that better?
That's it.
That's it.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I've described it, and here it is. Fox Pass Pottery, and this is what the inside looks like. And I just have to say, Jim and Barbara are so warm and welcoming, just like the shop is. When I was out there yesterday, it was a chilly morning, and there was a fire in the stove, and that the bump chair, it's not a Dallas bump chair, next to it was so warm and inviting, and such a great place to visit with Jim and Barbara. So would you like to tell us a little bit about Fox Pass and how long you've been there and your kind of idea behind your shop?
Sure. We had seen shops, and we knew that we both love people, and we love visiting, and some potters running a retail shop are craftspeople. That's just not what they need to do, but that's just what we needed to do. And we had visited shops in Mountain View and Eureka Springs and other places, and we just knew that's what we wanted to do. And so we first opened our shop in the front of the house in the living room just to see if we could, pull it off. And then after a couple of years, we knew we had to build a shop, and so we built this. Matter of fact, we had a barn or a shop raising. We had a long weekend, and I'd set the poles. It's all suspended on telephone poles, and I'd set those and organize the material. And there were 5 craftspeople. Gary and June were one, Donna and Thad, Flinnick and others. 5 of us got together and had a long weekend, and we put down that floor and put up the ceiling and raised the barn. And then I finished it over time over the next several months. But it's always a work in progress. There were many years that floor wasn't finished, and then finally we finished that. There's always something to do, but it's been a blessing. That shop has been. Now,
if it's right there at your home, now your children must have grown up in the shop and in your studio. So how did that impact them?
You see that pole right there in the center? There are 9 telephone poles to support this building. There's one right there in the center. Aaron and Fletcher, and these shelves there on the white shelves on the left weren't there at that time. When they were babies or children, they rode their tricycles around and around that. Well, never broke anything. I don't know how they pulled that off, but they were affected. Bless their hearts. They didn't have a chance. Fletcher is a potter. He's a full-time potter in Little Rock.
They had their little table in the corner
Yes.
to make pottery. They made pottery.
They did. Aaron specialized in big-bosomed women, and Fletcher specialized in snakes. And they had their own shelf, and customers would come in and to see what Fletcher and Aaron had out. So
He moved on to elephants.
he did. He moved on to elephants. And Aaron stuck with big-bosomed women for a long time. But I have some I treasure.
Oh, how fun.
But that's so they didn't have a chance. They both became full-time artists. So I tried to steer them into other areas, but that didn't work.
Okay, and this is like directly behind your showroom, isn't it? Is this where you?
There's a building out back. This is the Kiln Building. On one side, it's a 30 by 30 barn that we built a few years into our business. This is on one side of it where we mix clay, and there's a big kiln over on the other side, a big car kiln, and then another smaller gas kiln, several electric kilns, but material storage. And Barbara is working on a piece here. After the clay is mixed and it ages, I like to let it age 2 or 3 months if I can. It just makes it a little more workable. But Barbara does all hand building, and she's building a tray there. It's actually a kind of a casserole dish that she builds all with slabs and hand construction. There's lots of texture. I'm throwing a piece here, and I put a red clay slip, a liquid clay that I'm combing and decorating through, and then I'll put glazes after that's dried, bisque fired, and then I'll apply glazes, preparing it for its high glaze fire. Here's another tray. Barbara's sculpting some birds and flowers on a small tray. Series of bottles. I like bottle shapes. I just like the volume and the way they feel like they've breathed in. It gives them some life, and it's interesting to me to watch. I love shape and I love form, and where they've inflated either gives it a more masculine kind of aggressive or a more peaceful stance, depending on where the center of gravity is. I love exploring those shapes. Never get tired of it. And pictures. I love making pictures because they're such a piece that gets used in the kitchen. You know, you're almost sure that they're going to, they can be used for flowers, whatever, but they're made to use. And these are unglazed. They're just dry clay. They're ready to be bisque fired, then glazes applied and refired then to 2,400 degrees, either in the gas kilns or the wood-fired kiln. Making bowls there. I'm working series. When I make bowls, I will make maybe 15 or 20 or more bowls while I'm in that groove, and my hands and my brain are in agreement. And bowls too I like because they're so open. Here I'm glazing a bowl. This is a bowl. You had mentioned the glaze that Kate and Greg have. This I'm applying that glaze there. It's part. I think we'll probably see it in some dinner set pieces. But I'm applying the glaze, preparing it to be fired. That's what I've been doing today, is glazing all day. Here Fletcher is out in by our wood kiln, and he had this idea. He built a box that will hold a little more than the kiln will hold, so we know when we fill that box up, we've got enough to fire the kiln. I thought that was brilliant. Fletcher, although his workshop's in Little Rock, he has a kiln there. He and I fire the wood-fired kiln together. That's just more than either of us can do by ourselves. And in fact, when he got out of college, he came home and we built the wood-fired kiln. And it's just been a wonderful thing to be able to work with Fletcher on all this. And then Barbara and I work closely together with the wood kiln. Here he's loading the kiln. I was taking the pictures, but he's
now,
loading.
Is this the wood kiln or the gas one? What's the difference?
This is the wood-fired kiln here, and the fuel is wood. It's a Japanese style kiln, called the Borigama or hillside kiln. Here is some pictures of the inside of the kiln, and it shows some parametric cones, which people can ask about if they're curious, and some draw rings. And I may have a picture of this pot later on that's finished, but this is unglazed. Now Barbara has decorated this piece on the right there with just some underglaze, some black stain. And we will fire this to 2,400 degrees. When it gets up around 2,300 or so, after 16 hours or so of firing, we'll start putting salt into the kiln. And I think I probably have a picture of us doing this. Well, salt and here's the picture of the kiln, all loaded and ready to fire. The hump on the left is the firebox, and then there are 2 chambers that hold pottery, and then the chimney off the right side. But it's a fun kiln to fire. It takes us about 20 hours to fire it. We burn about 1.5 cords of wood. You're stoking it about every 3 minutes for that 20 hours. So
the wood goes in those little small holes where the bricks are kind of sticking out.
Yeah, you'll see in the second and third chamber there. And now Barbara's stoking it here, pre-stoking down in the blowholes. For the first 4 hours or so, we start the fire down there. We do that about 4 in the morning and just running wood in there, preheating it. And by the time it gets up to about 1,300, we move over and start stoking in the stoke holes.
I love to burn things.
Yeah, Barbara likes.
Now, did you say every 3 minutes?
About every 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah, it's a labor. And this kiln is easy to fire. There are potters, like Joe Bruin's kiln up near Fox, Arkansas, and Anagamo. Joe will fire a week and a half or 2 weeks every day, all 24 hours a day for that length of time. So ours is an easy kiln to fire. It's not easy, but
why would you use a gas kiln instead of a wood one? Just convenience? Or?
Well, the wood there, you get different effects. Now here, for example, I'd mentioned salt glazing. This is an angle iron. Now we stoke wood in these same holes. I'm opening the peephole, and Fletcher has an angle iron full of salt. And he's running that into the kiln, and he will dump it into the firebox. And the kiln is probably 2,400 degrees in there right now. Well, the sodium chloride, here comes the chemistry. The sodium chloride just dissociates, and the sodium is a very reactive metal, and it loves the clay, the alumina and silica in the clay. The sodium reacts chemically with the alumina and silica in the clay to make a sodium alumina silicate glass. So the salt glaze is not salt; it's a glass. It's the sodium is supplied by the salt, and it makes a very hard, durable glass on the surface. And you get some colors, some real subtle colors and effects that you wouldn't get in a gas kiln. Whereas in the gas kiln, we get colors and patterns that I wouldn't get in the wood fire, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So just putting how much salt do you have to put in for the?
We'll put probably at this point, it glazes the kiln too, all the bricks in the kiln, because they're made out of clay. So after some years, you get a buildup of glass that will so you don't have to use quite as much salt. But we use probably about 15 to 20 pounds of salt in a fire, and we'll do that over a 4-hour period. There were some pictures of some little rings up front in an earlier picture. So those little rings we draw out of the kiln. Those little rings you see right there. We reach in with a hook, and it's 2,400 degrees. We hook one out and quench it in water, and look and see how much glass buildup it's got. And that's why there's several of them. And when we're satisfied with that, we argue a while and say, okay, let's quit. And then we'll just taper the firing off. But that piece there with the tree and the kind of root thing underneath it, I think maybe you'll see a finished piece later on. But anyhow.
Believe me, Jim is not always the boss in this.
No.
Fletcher becomes the boss sometimes, and sometimes Jim.
And sometimes we get stuck, and one of us, when we're tired, and the one of us needs to go in the house and let the other one do it a while, take over, and then we come back out and we're back in the game. But here I'm just pulling that's in the gas kiln. It fires to the same
Back
temperature.
to another kiln.
But we don't salt in that. We apply glazes. Back up one. Well, okay, there the doors are. We put that wooden rack there and move the brick just over into that so you can see the finished work in there. That's what it looks like after it's fired and they're ready to unload. And people say, oh, it must be like Christmas. Well, sometimes it's like Halloween. It's you don't always get, sometimes it's not as good as you
We
wish.
usually get most of our things come out good.
We do. We have good luck. I'm always expecting the worst, and Barbara expects the best. So we balance ourselves.
Now, do you have to slowly cool it down? Does it matter?
We'll let it cool for 2 days. We won't touch it. But I do the same thing in the gas kiln. And that slow cool lets microcrystals develop, which adds an interest. It makes electric kilns can give equally good results, but the gas kilns made out of brick let it cool slower and give me some results that I couldn't get quite as easily in an electric kiln. They're not better; they're different. You just get some different. Plus, I can control the oxygen available to the carbon in both the gas and the fuel kilns, and get some what's called reduction reaction. I can get some colors that you wouldn't get in an electric kiln. And again, they're not better. I don't ever want to say that, but they're different. It's a different tool. It's a tool is what it is. And you learn to use it to your advantage, whatever kind of kiln you're using.
And now, do you have to do it a certain time of the year? Can you do it in the winter, or is it better in the summer?
We don't fire the wood-fired kiln in the summer. It will just melt you down. It's just once early June's the latest I want to fire. You can, but in this kiln, you might be sorry. This kiln is a gentle kiln to fire. It's a very nice kiln to fire. The Ozark Folk Center has a wood-fired kiln called a groundhog kiln. It's an old Appalachian style kiln. And it'll melt you down. It just
kills you.
Fire. But again, it's a tool. Now this kiln, I fire it anytime. This gas kiln, it's in that building, that kiln building. But and you see the door, and this gas kiln rolls out. There's a cart, and it rolls out. So it's called a car kiln. So I can just roll out and see all the wear there.
Oh, wow.
And unload it. So
colors.
it's fun to roll that out. And there, that piece, that red glaze.
It's like the bowl he was making earlier.
Yeah, I was making it in that video that you showed of the studio tours. But anyhow, you can see the patterning I was putting on it at that time. But that red glaze fired in oxidation or an electric kiln would be a green glaze. But it's got copper oxide in it, and at a very critical time in the firing, I can adjust the burners on my gas kiln, starve them for oxygen, reduce the copper oxide to colloidal copper metal, and turn it red. So there's some advantage. That's just a tool,
That's beautiful. Now
you don't have to know all that, although any potter does. It's not, but it's nice to, again, that chemistry makes it fun to know basically what's happening to that, and then sometimes to make it work. And you get surprises.
Now, how large is this? Is this like dinner plate size, or is this a large?
That pot is about probably. That bowl is probably about 14 or 15 inches, and it's a big bowl.
Wow, yeah, that's large.
It's a show bowl, but you can use it. It's certainly functional. And I've altered the rim too.
Oh, hang on. Okay, here we are. And now, as we look through these pieces, please share, the process for making it, but also the inspiration for the reason you chose those colors or the shape.
Well, this is a wheel thrown piece, and then Barbara sculpted the knob. We work together on pieces like that a lot. She does her work, I do my work, and then sometimes we work together on pieces. Often we do. But she sculpted the fish knob on the top. And it's a large jar. It's probably a 2.5 gallon jar or so, something like that. I don't remember. But it has an ash glaze. It's an old ancient glaze made from basically wood ash from our fireplace, from our wood stove, a little red clay and a little lime. And it's a real runny glaze. You can see it breaks into rivulets. It's because of the high calcium content of the wood ash. But it runs. Now, the trick is to get it to run, but not run and stick to the kiln shelf.
Oh.
And the old timers use that glaze a lot because the materials were available. And you'll see it on old stoneware pieces from the colonial era. They called it tobacco spit glaze because it looks like you spitted a spittoon and, ran down. But I use that glaze a lot. And there are a lot of variations, of course. Many, many variations on it. One of Barbara's pieces, a flicker that she sculpted. That's life size, or maybe a little bigger.
It was pretty big.
Maybe bigger than life size.
Oh, that's beautiful. Is that one that you saw in your yard?
It's just one of my favorite birds. I don't see them too often.
Yeah, well, most afternoons I'll go out and they immediately fly out of the pasture. But there'll be a pair of them out there most afternoons. Here lately, I've been.
I like to do I do like to do the birds that are common in our area.
Well, it's beautiful.
One of Barbara's pieces. Do you want to tell them how you build that?
I build that up with. I like to leave a natural edge and build up. Put my next strip of clay inside so that natural edge shows on each level. I just build it until it says it wants to be done.
That's a big piece. That's probably 16, 18 inches tall. I don't know, maybe taller.
Mm-hmm.
But and Barbara tears the slabs a lot and then uses lots of texture. Mm-hmm. I try to tear the slabs and they look like I just kind of tore up some slabs. But it's it's something, whatever you do a lot, if you cook
the color variation and the texture, this is just so lovely.
It's one that really worked. It just came out. The kiln does a lot of it. It does its part.
And that one is a bowl. That's a bowl I threw. And then while it was still leather hard, Barbara did like chip carving, like you would carve in wood, a relief carving. So she did the carving. And then she very carefully glazed her flower patterns and leaves. And then I waxed those, or she did, I think. She waxed over those so I could glaze the rest of it with a Shino, the copper-colored glaze, Japanese-style glaze. And where it was waxed, that glaze was resisted. And then when we fired it, the wax burned off very early in the fire, and then her colors developed underneath it.
Now, are those magnolias?
No, it's just a flower.
kind of a dogwood.
It has 6 or 7 petals.
Yeah,
come up with one for me, Barbara.
It's not a dogwood.
Dogwoody.
Inspired. There you go.
She just made them up.
Yeah, I just made it up.
And I like texture on. Now there are small dragonflies on this, kind of like screen wire or something with dragonflies. Barbara, I did the slip work, and Barbara, my dragonflies look.
She never tells me what to paint. I just paint what I see. I
hand her things, and she does it.
Mm-hmm.
But my dragonflies look a little bit like they've hit a car windshield. So it does that.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, it's more of Barbara's.
That was a request. I made this pair of vases for a customer in Little Rock.
They were very large.
Mm-hmm. She wanted them for her fireplace.
24, a couple of feet tall.
Oh,
I like how that came out.
So you do commission? Do you both do commission work too? If someone comes in,
if I like the commission.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I'm trying to do in life I do a lot of dinner sets on commission, but I don't let people come in and design. And well, could you do this, but do it with a mauve or whatever,
It can't turn out
because they're going to be unhappy and I'm going to be unhappy both, when it doesn't come out So I try to
But
know my limits.
We do listen to people and
Yes.
see what they have in mind.
A lot of times I'll say, no, what do you got in mind? Because sometimes it strikes me and it's a good idea. But the dinner sets, which we are always on commission, I never have one in the shop because I'm always behind on them. But I have certain glazes that I use, but I don't let them do the designing.
Right. Oh, this is a great example of all those beautiful glazes.
It's just
I love making mugs.
Normal mugs.
I love making mugs because I know they're going to get used and possibly, and I try to encourage when people are picking out a mug to feel it and put it to their lips and see if the handle works. And if it does, they're going to dig it out of the dishwasher in the morning. You know.
Sometimes they prefer Jim's mug, and sometimes they prefer Fletcher's mug.
Absolutely.
Fletcher's handles are entirely different.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can see the variation there. It's
and
beautiful.
A good potter. I mean, I have potters I know all over the country and the world, and you could just show me a clip of their handle, a piece of it, and I could tell you who made that mug because the handles were so distinctive. And there's that red glaze on a set of mugs. That was part of a dinner set.
Those are gorgeous.
Thank you.
Oh,
and there's that dinner. I was glazing a bowl in that pattern, and that came from. I've been doing that pattern longer than any pattern. I first did it way back years ago with Melissa Harwood. I don't know if you know Melissa, but anyhow, she's works at the university now. Dean of women. I'm not.
Her name is Melissa Rom.
Now, anyhow, I developed that. I did that when she was a teenager, and she started building her hope chest and wanted it. So I developed that pattern. But it comes from floating the rivers. I love floating the Caddo and the Washita and the Buffalo if I get a chance. But where you come in a bend in the river and you're with your canoe and the water washes up under roots and the roots are stuck down. And the patterns are just so wonderful. And the light plays off the water and bounces up against the bank. And so that represents the roots and the white represents the river. I'm not trying to be, what's the word? Literal, but that's where that patterns come from, things like that, things that you
inspired by it. You can tell and the colors are just, the contrast of the blue and the orange, it's just, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
But I do know too that there's that piece that was in the kiln.
It had a little green in the grass.
Yeah, Barbara added a little green when she put the decoration on that piece.
And the salt did its part.
Yes. So there was no glaze put on that other than just a little line there, and then the underglaze, the drawing, the black stain that Barbara put in. We glazed the inside because the salt vapors won't penetrate inside the pot. But the outside, all that brown, it's glazed and it's very, very durable, safe for the dishwasher, or oven, or micro, whatever, But
that was going to be my next question. So all of these pieces can go in the dishwasher or the microwave?
Well, there are some things I don't recommend for the microwave. Flatware, for say dinner plates, for example. You may have a piece of steak only in one spot on that plate. Well, the plate's not going to get hot. If I fired it properly, it's vitreous. It's not going to absorb any water. And that's what makes it like a piece that gets hot in the microwave empty. You don't want to use because the clay is absorbing water over time, and that's what's making it hot. And it can literally be a bomb. But I mix my clay such that the clay unglazed is vitreous. It will hold water. It won't absorb. It's the very low 1%. And less absorption. Well, anyhow, long story short, what this has done, or back to answer your question, a piece of steak or something, a potato in one spot on a plate can heat it only in that spot, cause thermal expansion, and it can cause it to break. Whereas a mug or a bowl that's got something full of liquid or coffee or whatever will expand the piece evenly. So most things can go in a microwave, but plates, there are a few things, or odd shaped things I recommend. These pieces get costly, and just to throw them in a microwave, and mugs and such you can, but some things are better.
But the dishwasher is perfectly safe.
Dishwasher's fine.
Yeah.
Or oven.
That's another design, a different design. I painted the whole thing, so it's actually a painting on a pot.
But that was wood fired, wasn't it?
It was wood fired.
So so that could have worked either in wood or gas. But
salt changes a lot of the colors. I don't know what's going to happen.
Oh wow, kind of a mystery.
That was a happy one.
And Barbara, I mean, looking at the pictures we were looking at, you might get the idea that Barbara glazes everything. Typically, I glaze my things and she glazes her things. But then sometimes pieces like that, she's going to do a job that, it just needs her touch.
I put more patterns on his things for the wood kiln. I don't make very many things just for the wood kiln. So that's all.
We came to the end of the photos, but I want to check and see if we have any questions. Paul, are there any questions from the viewers?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. There you are.
First of all, Roxanne in the comments said it was fascinating, and I agree. Jim and Barbara, I think that was one of the most thorough, discussions of anything, of any kind of process I've heard on one of these library programs, and I agree. It was fascinating. One thing that stood out to me was Barbara, when you mentioned that Jim and your son, you can tell who did which mug based on the handle. It's just interesting to think of how every artist has kind of a signature style that's so distinct.
And that's where one of the things that I have seen craftspeople do. I've watched, over this 48 years, I've watched a lot of people start craft and develop. There's a skill set. Takes about 5 or 6 years at least to start feeling comfortable in your craft, and then takes 10 or 12 years to really develop skills. And I think that's probably true with a musician. I would love to hear more musicians talk about that. But painters, that's certainly true. And
find your style.
Or writers.
Find your style.
Yeah, but finding your style, you're copying, and there's nothing wrong with that. I copy today sometimes, but I will do it. I like the term musicians cover each other. Well, sometimes I'll wanna take a Tom Turner pot and cover it and make it and explore that shape. But I'm certainly not gonna, at this stage in my career, make Tom Turner pots. But I'll explore, what's there. But I guess what I started saying was, after that 10 or 12 years of developing skill, I've seen a lot of craftspeople, whether they're potters or whatever, get in a rut and quit because they've got the how down, but they somehow lost the why. And things like making those pieces because somebody's going to enjoy having it in their hand, and it's going to start their morning off right, for functional pieces or for visual pieces, that it's going to serve. It's going to do a job, whether that job is for your soul, for your just daily use, visually or functionally, and that becomes the why. And even little nuances like handles fill that purpose, and people start developing their own style and it becomes theirs. So that's part of the why that's important, that keeps you going.
Yes, and I have my cup that I love to use too. So that's something, fits my hand well.
Oh,
Correct.
good.
Well, I'll show you a cup that I love to use.
No, I wish he wouldn't do this.
Restaurant mug. I have coffee with my dad.
what the cobbler's kids don't have good shoes. There you go.
I have coffee with my dad because I started at 4 or 5 years old at Lone Oak Restaurant, and he let me have a cup of milk 5:30 in the morning when I'd go there with him. He'd put a spoon of coffee in it, and so when I use that mug, I have coffee with my dad. I might use a cup like this, which is a very fine porcelain cup. You see light through it. It's so thin and translucent. I mean, it's just the opposite of this cup, you know, wherever they are in terms of what it is. But a cup powder named Tom Coleman makes this, and special occasions I'll drink wine out of this cup, you know, and so each piece has certain. It calls your name to use it for certain times and certain events.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. Were there any more questions?
Yeah, there's a few questions. Liz asked, of all the steps in the process of creating the pottery, are there parts you enjoy more than others?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
The making. I can hardly make myself quit making. The studio gets so full, and Barbara says, you're going to have to fire. You're gonna fire. But I just love shape. I love making that form and shape.
We both prefer the making it. You have to glaze them to get to the finished step. But
there are potters who I call them mud potters. They just love to make. And then there are potters who just love fire. They just want to burn things, and they love firing, you know. And then there are the glaze potters, and I am one, but that's not my main love. So, and hopefully you're good at all of it. But that's a good question for me. I love just pushing clay around on the wheel.
Melinda wants to know, where do you get your clays?
Hi, Melinda. I bet that's Melinda Barron. We buy our clays from clay mines, or anymore generally from pottery supply houses, like but the clays themselves come from clay mines, like in Missouri, or there's a kaolin clay out of Florida. There's a ball clay out of Kentucky. Each clay adds. We put 4 different clays and 4 different minerals. Silica, which is kind of interesting, comes from novaculite rock right here in Hot Springs. The silica that we use in our clay and glaze is a key ingredient to both clay and glaze. But Malvern Minerals mines novacite, which is just a pure silica. So they come from various supply houses that buy them from mine. We buy them in ton quantities, generally in 50-pound bags. That's what's wrong with my back today. But and there's a lot of labor, just manual labor. You saw me mixing clay. A lot of wood cutting. You know, if you burn a cord and a half of wood in one firing, you got to cut all that wood and split it and stack it, dry it, move it 2 or 3 times. And so that the way we work, that's a particular labor. There are other ways to do it where you don't have to do that. You can fire in electric kilns and get just as good a results, just different. But I like that. I like that labor.
Got one more question before that. There's a comment. Deborah says the Larkins are rock stars.
Well, we deal with rocks a lot. One rock that's neat is a nepheline cyanite, which is mined in Little Rock. Make roofing granules out of it. Granite Mountain, that down south of Little Rock. It's not really granite; it's nepheline cyanite chemically, but that makes it's a real neat glaze ingredient all by itself.
She may not have meant that.
So,
good pun.
We know a bit about the rocks. I don't know if we're rock stars.
Last question from Roxanne. Can Jim define or explain what bisque firing is and why it's important?
Sure. You don't have to bisque fire, but bisque firing is a low fire, around 1800 degrees in my case, to make the clay permanent but not. It's about like a red clay planter when it comes out of the bisque fire. We bisque fire in an electric kiln. We could bisque fire in gas kilns, but the electric's just convenient. But we take it over about a 10-hour period, something like that, to 1800 degrees, and it still absorbs the glaze and makes it easy to handle. And you can glaze just the raw clay. You can single fire, and some potters do, but there are advantages and then there are disadvantages. We've just chosen over time to bisque fire, but that's what the bisque is. It's just a bisque means seashell or a pink shell. I think that has to do with the color. Maybe it's French. I should know that, but has to do with the color of the clay when it's bisque fired.
And I had one question texted me. Do you ever feel like you've explored all of the shapes and sizes and colors and textures?
Let me tell you a story there. I heard somebody say, it was a painter, who was it? I remember his name in a minute, famous painter. He said he likes to gallery walk. I love to go to gallery walk. I wish we had more clay work represented, but if I go to some place and see that somebody's been exploring some possibility that I've thought of for years, but just hadn't had time to do it, and hear somebody's doing it, I'm never disappointed. I think, thank God, I don't have to do that now. Somebody else is exploring that, because there's just not enough lifetimes. I've got a lifetime that's just been such a narrow window, that you just can't. There's just too many possibilities.
There's always inspirations everywhere.
And one of the difficulties is to not scattershot. You do have to, as you're working in your career, you do have to narrow, or I had to narrow down, because you will stay. You won't ever develop the skills you need if you don't concentrate on some area and just mine that area. At least that's been my experience. Some people are more talented and can go off in more directions. I'm a slow study, and I have to stick with this one thing.
Well, I could wander around in your shop all day long and look at the different, just visiting with you when I was out there yesterday and seeing the examples that you shared with us this evening. I mean, thank you both so much for spending the time with the audience. But I mean, I could sit and listen to you talk on here for another hour. So I would encourage everybody to go out to Fox Pass and visit with Jim and Barbara. I mean, what we've seen tonight is just the tip of the iceberg, and they're just so kind to visit with you and explain the process in person, and that beautiful black pot that I found out there. I mean, it's just something for everybody. It was real modern looking and some very rustic. It's just truly something for everybody.
Well, thank you so much. And we have Fletcher's pots in our shop too. We keep Fletcher's work, and so there, the three of us, you get a variety that way more than if it was just one of us in the shop. But
and a few from his girlfriend Beth once in a while.
Fletcher's girl, not my girlfriend.
Fletcher's girlfriend.
But I'm always happy to show people around. People sometimes say, "Oh, you're not demo." Well, some days I'm mixing clay, some days I'm mixing glazer, I'm glazing, or some days I'm off backpacking or fishing. But usually, if I possibly can, I show people around, and glad to let them see what we're doing.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to share a little bit more about Gallery Walk, but if anybody has any more questions, they can still pop them in. And when I wrap this up, we'll come back and ask if Jim and if there's any other questions for Jim or Barbara. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and talk.
Paul and Mary, thank you all both. I want to thank you all for your facilitating this.
Well, it's our pleasure. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I'll be right back in just a minute. I'm going to share my screen and look at what's happening for Gallery Walk. because Gallery Walk it's Wednesday, so day after tomorrow. And so I thought I would just flip through the different galleries and share a little bit about what's going on in those galleries. There's always an article in the newspaper on Thursdays, usually talking about Gallery Walk. The Hot Springs Area Cultural Alliance does a Facebook event each month. So if you're wondering what might be happening at Gallery Walk, you can certainly check out the Hot Springs Area Cultural Alliance Facebook page or hotspringsarts.org for the Gallery Walk tab. And at Justice Gallery is located at 827 Central Avenue. And her March exhibit is featuring Matthew Hasty's luminous work masterfully captures light and atmospheric conditions in his southern landscapes, which you can see that on the right-hand side. They're so beautiful. The light in all of his paintings. And at Justice Gallery, they have a number of Matthew's different paintings there for you to see. Just beautiful. And then new paintings by Stephen Weiss, which is very playful. You can see there the vibrant colors. Also a number of pieces by Robin Horn, of course, Dolores Justice, Randall Good, Donnie Copeland, Jean Sparling, Sandra Sell, John Lasseter, and many times during Gallery Walk, the featured artists will be there. And of course, Dolores Justice is always there, the artist and owner in the gallery, and happy to visit with those who attend Gallery Walk. Over at the Convention Center this month on a Friday evening, the Mid-Southern Watercolorists are opening their exhibit. It's the 51st annual Juried exhibit. There are 38.
Mary, are you sharing your screen, or it's
Yes.
not showing up? It's not showing up.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. Oh,
Thank you, Roxanne, for letting us know.
thank you, Roxanne. And my phone was buzzing too. My husband was letting me know as well. So thank you, Rox. Thank you, Robert. The Mid-Southern Watercolor exhibit will open at the Convention Center. 38 pieces from across the United States. Some were even shipped from the other side of the world. We have a number of local artists represented. That will be up through the end of June, but the exhibit opening and reception will be during Gallery Walk on Friday evening. Amazing watercolors. At American Art Gallery is actually the oldest art gallery. They have been open since the very first Gallery Walk in 1989. It's located on Central Avenue at 724, and it's featuring Clyde, the knife maker Claude Lambert will be there with some new knives, and Ernie Bolo, who will show his new jewelry and talk about jewelry designs as well. Art Originally is our newest art gallery. It's located next to Weldon's. Let's see, the address for Art Originally is 3911 Central Avenue. And they have new work by Rick Van Hook and Gina Kraft, their newest artist. They also have a trunk show on Thursday. So the day before Gallery Walk, they have a trunk show during the day. So if you haven't had a chance to stop by Art Originally during the trunk show or during Gallery Walk, please do that. Also, Dryden Pottery, located on Whittington Avenue, at 341 Whittington Avenue. They will be open for Gallery Walk, always offering some beautiful, vibrant pieces. Zach Dryden is so talented. And right next door to Dryden Pottery is Emergent Arts. Every month during COVID restrictions, they have put a display in their front window. So when you go down to Dryden Pottery, be sure to stop in at Emergent Arts and check out their exhibit in the front window. It's terrariums. I mentioned this earlier, that there are pop-up galleries. One of the locations for the pop-up gallery, the Warehouse, and that's located at 301 Broadway. And Jennifer Sims is the owner of the Warehouse. It's an event space, and up to artists every month. This month, Dawn Watson will be painting live, and there's beautiful art, music, some fun goodies, treats to eat, and a great gift shop there as well. So that's at the warehouse. Gallery Central will be open till 6 o'clock so not open quite as late till 8 or 9 o'clock like some of the other galleries, but Laura Scott, the owner, does a beautiful job. She has lots of gift items as well as the artwork. She has James Hayes glass, and of course this time of year the Bob Snyder pieces are a favorite. That's the painting here. He does an entire series of Oak Lawn, and she has many of his pieces as well. Artist Gallery Workshop is Artist Workshop Gallery is at 610 Central Avenue, and the featured artists this month there are Hugh Donahoe and Irma McLeod. And of course, that's Hugh's piece there. The title of that so aptly titled Meanwhile in Missouri. And they are not open for gallery walk quite yet, but they do a virtual gallery walk on their Facebook page or website, and we share it on the Hot Springs Area Cultural Alliance website as well. Okay, so that's just a little sneak peek of what's happening at during gallery walk this month. As I said, some of the galleries are not open yet. Oh, and I didn't mention Whittington Gallery. I don't know how I missed that one. But Whittington Gallery, located on Whittington Avenue, is under new ownership. The people are Ginger and Jeff, who own Bubbaloo's, purchased Whittington Gallery, which John Fagenkrantz had started a few years ago, still packed with artists. There's music, there's over 40 artists represented at Whittington Gallery, and there's always lots happening and always something new at Whittington Gallery, located on Whittington Avenue at 307 Whittington Avenue. And they have a new artist for March is Bill Alley. He has been creating art since he retired 10 years ago and is just really excited to be a part of the gallery. So if you haven't met the new owners, the new artists, be sure to check out Whittington Gallery. And as I mentioned, Gallery Walk is Friday evening. The galleries are open late, but the galleries are there all year long. So if you miss Gallery Walk, that's okay. You can still pop into the galleries anytime and see what's new in the gallery. It's a great place to shop for gifts or even something for yourself. So please support our local artists, our local galleries, and you can check out the galleries also out. You can drive out north of town and visit Fox Pass, Jim and Barbara at Fox Pass. So if there are, and Paul, if you want to bring everybody back together again, I just did a little quick run through of Gallery Walk, and we're so fortunate. People come here on vacation and we get to live here and enjoy the arts year round. So were there any more questions?
No more questions while you were doing that. But I just think, we said at the beginning of the program, we plan on this being a new monthly series. And it'll be interesting to see if the pandemic is able to get more under control as the series goes on, and maybe how the gallery walk is ran will progress a little bit more back to normal as time goes on.
Yes, I certainly hope so. And we look forward to Arts in the Park. That's the end of April through the beginning of May. So I know there will be more galleries open for April. And then, of course, we have big events planned during Arts in the Park the first weekend in May for that gallery walk. So
there's a few programs I want to mention, but first, thank you to our special guest, the Larkins. How about you say your final words and let everyone know where they can find out more information about Fox Pass Pottery?
Well, you can go to our Facebook page anytime at Fox Pass Pottery Facebook page, and we post things when we have firings. We try to keep. I have our website, foxpasspottery.com. It's sad and really needs rebuilding. It's old, but one of these days we're going to get that done too. But the Facebook page, you can good information there when we have events. And by the way, I do thank you for. I meant to mention Dryden because there are so many different ways. We do pottery one way. Dryden does wheel work, but they use a different clay, different colors, a whole different thing. You can go to Potters in Eureka Springs, or just look at pottery and really look at the different ways that people approach it. It's always fun to see that.
Shout out to my coworker Jill Dryden.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Larkins. So a few programs to mention. First of all, tomorrow night is our next program, and I'm sure there's some overlap in people who are interested in this. They'll be interested in photography. It's the 100-year anniversary, so the centennial of Hot Springs National Park. So photographer Eli Vega is going to give a showcase of photography that he's taken around the national park. And I believe he's told me he has 100 photos that he's going to talk about in commemoration of that 100th anniversary. So that's same time, 6 p.m. tomorrow night. And then, Mary, you've got both of your series ongoing with the library. So the last Wednesday of every month is the Sister City series. Do you have anything you want to reveal about that yet before we do our...
No, not yet. Yes, there's so many different facets of the Sister City program. We are planning the Cherry Blossom Festival on March 21st. So a little plug in for that. And you can go to the Hot Springs Sister City program Facebook page to find out more.
And then this gallery walk program will be the first Wednesday of every month. So the next one will be April 7th. And you know what you want to do for that yet?
Now, we'll have featured artists on that one, and we will also, for the April one, that will be the last one before Arts in the Park. So I'll be talking about some of the different activities that we have going on during Arts in the Park.
Excellent. And hopefully the library will be able to collaborate in some way like we've done in previous years. Of course, last year got canceled, postponed a little bit, but
oh yeah,
this year we'll have some form, maybe virtual, but stay tuned on that. And all right, well, thank everyone for joining this, and thank everyone for watching.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Jim and Barbara.
Thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
All right, have a good evening and be safe.
Thanks.
Good night.